There we go. Thank you, everybody, for joining me this afternoon to talk about cash flow projections and access to capital, and really, what that means for you and your business plan as you are getting ready to get a loan for your small business. As I said, we've got a small group today, so feel free to just go ahead and unmute yourself if you ever have any questions. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do first, go into the business plan, and then go into the cash flows, and then talk a little bit about the loan products that we have available. So let's go ahead and get started. So first, um, who are we? So Maryland Capital Enterprises, we are what's known as a CDFI, a Community Development Financial Institution. And what that means is that we are here to help folks start and grow their small businesses in many ways. Number one, we offer what's known as technical assistance. That's one-on-one counseling, webinars just like this, our annual Women's Business Conference, and in-person classroom sessions. And that's available to small businesses across Maryland, and at no cost for anything except for the conference. We serve, though, also in Maryland, the Eastern Shore, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Anne Arundel County, Hartford County, and Cecil County now as well. With that and all those places, you are eligible to get small business loans. If you're a new business, that's up to $35,000. And if you're a business that's been around for 2 or more years, that can go up significantly. So to learn more about us, check us out at marylandcapital.org or Women's Business Center at marylandcapitalenterprises.org. And that second one is because in 2020, we became a designated SBA Women's Business Center. And what that means is that we have enhanced services for women and minority-owned businesses. So most folks think of us as a lender, which is, absolutely right to do. We are an SBA intermediary lender, but that doesn't mean that we lend SBA funds. In fact, we do not lend SBA funds. The SBA backs the loans that we do make. So think of them as sort of a co-signer for your small business loan. Where we do get money is from other federal agencies, the state of Maryland, and also from foundations and for banks. But it's again good to know that we also offer that free counseling and training, whether or not you are going to apply for a loan with us. So before we start building cash flows, you are going to need a plan. And so I like to think about your business as a building. So when you think about, going to downtown Baltimore or downtown New York, you're going to see a fenced empty block with a picture of the skyscraper that's going to go on top of it. And then that picture is still sitting there 18 months later. It looks like not a lot has gone on. And then all of a sudden stuff starts to go, and 6 months later, it's a bustling mixed use, skyscraper. The reason for those 18 months of nothing is because they're building the foundation, they're building the plan, they're doing all of the environmental studies, everything, getting all the permits together, get everything together so that when they're ready to start, it's going to grow quickly and thrive quickly. So think about that as your business. The more time you spend building that foundation, the easier the rest of your business journey is going to be. So we're writing a business plan to get a loan. So specifically, when you're targeting your business plan to a lender, these are a few things that we think you should think about. So what is the business plan? So first of all, you don't want to just use it for your lenders. You want to use it as a blueprint for your business, really. What you're doing is you're saying, look, this is the business that I want to do. This is how I'm going to set it up. These are who my customers are going to be. These are who my competitors are going to be. And so that as you're growing your business, if you get in the weeds, you're not sure what to do, you can open up that document and it can ground you. But of course, it's also there to get loans and grants. So there are very few small business grants available, but they do exist. So when we think about writing it, you want to think about your business plan as a resume. So you're going to change your resume depending on what job you're applying for. Same thing with your business plan. You're going to move things around that are going to highlight the interest of whoever you're asking your question of. So if you're applying for a grant, you might want to focus on all the great work you do in the community, hiring from within the community, how you're a big part of your local neighborhood, and talk about what a good business you are. But if you're applying for a bank loan, all that other stuff is great and should be in there, but what they're really most focused on, are you going to be able to repay that loan? So that's what you want to focus your business plan on. So what are we as nonprofit lenders and then for-profit banks looking for in a business plan? So, number one, we're looking for your passion. What drew you to the business? And you want to actually write that in your business plan. Did you see elder relatives in nursing homes not being taken care of well enough, and you decide that you want to do something different and open up your own assisted living business so that you can give people a better quality of life? Talk about that because that's going to be what drives you to start and what keeps you passionate as you're growing your business. You also then want to talk about your expertise. Passion will only get you so far. You need to have some experience or some education. And even if you don't have that yet, can you get a mentorship? Can you get that training as you're growing your business? Then we're looking for your research. We want to make sure that you have gone and done all of the work that you need to do to understand what your business is, where it fits in the market, and who's going to be shopping at your business or taking advantage of your services. Additionally, you want to think about your contingency plans. If you're a one-person shop, how is your business going to succeed if you're unable to work for 3 weeks or 3 months or for 6 months? What are you going to do? And then also what we're looking for is an ask. We want you to very quickly at the beginning of your business plan, let us know who you are and let us know what you are looking for. And that's going to be in the first part of your business plan, which is your executive summary. So what I'm about to go through now is the 4 parts of our business plan template. Um, we feel that this is a very good way to write your business plan, but you know your business better than any of us. So as long as you're getting all this information in, sometimes, moving the chapters around, moving the headers around, or just, moving things around completely makes sense for your business, and that's okay. Before we go into the content, there are a few things I'd like to talk about the business plan. Number one, don't pay somebody to write your business plan for you. There's a couple of reasons. Number one is because there are lots of free resources that will help you write your business plan. And you do want to be the person who writes your business plan for a couple of reasons. Number one, your business needs to be in your voice. You need to be able to explain your business and you want to be able to sound like you're the person who wrote the plan. That's going to show some expertise. It's going to show that you really understand your business. Also, it's going to show dedication. You're willing to put in the time and the hard work, and lenders like to see that. So now, what do you want in your executive summary? As I said, this is going to be just the sort of, what your business does, what you're looking for, just a little summary so that when they go through the rest, they know what you're expecting out of them. And the way that you do that is first by starting a introductory paragraph. Now, later on, we're going to be doing a cash flow projection for a fake business that is completely fictional called Nick's Dill Pickles. So if this were the Nick's Dill Pickles business plan, the opening paragraph might say, Nick's Dill Pickles LLC is a wholesaling pickle operation operating out of Baltimore, Maryland, and owned by Nick Rudolph. We are seeking a loan of $10,000 so that we can purchase additional pickling equipment to meet our wholesale needs. So if you say all of that at the beginning, they're going to know who you are, where you are, and what you're looking for. And with that in mind, they're going to read the rest of the business plan, and that's going to make it easier for them. And anything you can do to make it easier for them is going to be a good thing. One other way you can do that is by not making your business plan too long. A lot of folks think you need a 20, 50, 100-page business plan, but really most folks aren't going to want to see more than 10. When I email you that business plan template, there's a good chance that your business plan will be shorter than the template, and that is okay. What you want to make sure is that you're getting all the information in there, you're getting it in your voice, but you're also getting it in a succinct way that is going to make sure that they understand what you're doing without getting bored. Once you do that introductory paragraph, then you want to talk about your story. This is where you use the language about what drew you to the business and about your passion. Then you want to go into a very brief, basic information about what your business does. You don't need to go, too much detail, but you want to talk a little bit about what your special sauce is. Why are folks going to come to you instead of somebody else? Is it price? Is it service? Are you offering something that folks don't have? What is that special sauce? And then at the end, a little bit more detail to ask, how many, exactly what pickling equipment are you going to purchase? How long will it take for you to purchase those pickling equipments and then get some pickles, to the storefronts. The next section is going to be your longest your longest section, which is your marketing plan. This is much, much, much more than how you're going to advertise your business. The first thing you want to do is do some market research. Google is your friend, but your local chamber of commerce can be your friend, your local library, your department of commerce with the state. You want to research and show that your industry is growing, particularly where you want to open your business. You can find data. You want to find some quotes to pull out of it that you can cite in your business plan. Then you want to talk about your target customer. Who are you going after? You may be able to serve everybody, but is there a demographic out there that if you're getting many of those folks coming in, are they going to be, that they're going to be enough to make sure that you're paying your employees, you're paying your bills, and you're paying yourself? So, if you're opening up a salon in downtown Baltimore, you might say, look, we can cut anybody's hair, but, our primary customer is going to be, let's say 25 to 55-year-old African American woman who makes between 75 and $150,000 a year. And as long as you're focusing your marketing there, getting that demographic into your business, you're going to do well. And then everything else is just sort of, a cherry on top of the sundae. Number three, you want to talk about your competition, and that's not just just about naming them. It's about understanding why they're doing well. So the first thing is to understand is that no matter how unique you think your business is, you have competitors. If you come and say that there are no competitors to your business, most banks are going to say this person doesn't understand the market. So I'd like to say list three, talk about who they are and what they do well. And then talk about how you're going to thrive in the market with them. What is that special sauce that's going to get folks through your doors instead of somebody else's? Now, when you're thinking about competition, with small business, it's easy to think locally, but you also want to think regionally, nationally, even internationally. If you're opening up a comic book store, two competitors might be the local shops within 20 minutes of you, but you might want to think about making that third one Amazon.com, because what you're letting the folks know is that you understand that people can buy this stuff somewhere else, but you've got a reason for them to come to you, if it's your pricing, your customer service, whatever that is. And speaking of pricing, talk about how you're deciding your pricing and where you want to be in the market. Are you super high end? Are you middle of the road? Are you offering a value proposition? There's room in the market for all three of those, and you can make a lot of money doing all three of those as well. It's about understanding your market and figuring out where you fit in. Then you want to talk about your advertising. How are you going to get the word out about your business? And so, are you a traditional brick and mortar where you're going to have maybe a social media campaign, maybe some radio and television ads or a billboard? Great. Go into some detail there. Don't just say, I'm going to have a social media campaign. Talk about how you're going to do it. But let's say that you're, looking, in the medical industry and your clients are going to be doctors' offices. Well, then your advertising budget is probably going to be mostly in networking and conferences and going and meeting with the folks that will be your clients one-on-one. So understanding what your marketing needs are and being able to articulate them is very important here. The third section is your organization and operations. So this is where we're talking about, the legal structure of your business, the location of your business, and that doesn't mean what city you're going to be located in, but are you going to be home-based? Are you going to be brick and mortar? Are you going to be online? Are you going to be some combination there? And if you're going to be brick and mortar, what are your stores hours? And if not, when are you going to be available to customers? When you're thinking about employees, will you even need employees, or is this something that you're going to run on your own? If you do, are they going to be, W-9 employees, or are they going to be contractors? There's different positives and negatives for both of those. And then you want to think about what you're going to pay them and how you're going to pay them. So the more you can talk about that, the more that the person reading the business plan is going to understand that you get that maybe your business is not going to just be run by you, and this is how you're going to manage and make sure that your employees stay. The next thing you want to talk about is your insurance. Every small business needs insurance. Sometimes it's just a general liability policy, something that might cost between $600 and $1,200 a year. But if you start doing things like working with food or with kids or with animals or the elderly or medicine or anything like that, those are going to go up. So you want to find insurance agents as early as possible. Talk to two or three of those folks, see what they're telling you, is necessary. And if you talk to three of them, you'll have a pretty good idea of what actually is necessary. Then you can go price shopping and make sure that you are covered in case something bad goes down. Then you want to talk about your business growth. Are you planning to just have, stay a one person shop, or do you want to grow? Do you eventually want to have many shops, or do you want to franchise? Talk about that. You also might want to speak about your exit plan. Are you a serial entrepreneur that wants to build this business and sell it so you can build another one? Are you trying to build a legacy for your family and friends? Or is there a problem that you're trying to solve? And as soon as that problem's solved, you're going to close the business because there's not going to be any more business for that. All of those are good reasons, good exit strategies. Then, as I said before, your contingency. What happens if you are sick and can't work for a whole quarter? How is your business going to thrive? And then now, more than COVID-19, what we're really thinking about is, folks are much more in tune with, what's going on with communicable diseases out there. So, what happens if your employee or a customer tests positive and you think that your employees or other customers may have been exposed? How are you going to deal with that? The last section is going to be your financial plan, and this is going to look different whether or not you are a startup or a existing business. If you are a startup, you want to talk about your startup costs, and you want to be very detailed. You want to have quotes and invoices if at all possible. So break out, what's going to be your equipment, what's going to be sort of that overhead money, and then do you need inventory or maybe cleaning supplies to do your job? What's that initial cost going to be? If you're an existing business, we're going to want to see that breakout of what you're going to purchase as well, but we're also going to see your existing financials. So at least 2 years, if you've been around for 2 years, of things like your profit and loss statements, your quarterly balance sheet, and your business taxes. This is where you can either add those as addendums or part of the business plan. You also want to provide any information about existing loans or debt the business has. The last thing that you want to have happen is for us to pull your credit and see that there's a loan on there that you didn't tell us about. You then want to talk about the break-even point. How many sales do you need to make a week, a month, a year in order to pay all your bills? The next section is the cash flow projections, which we're going to go into great detail in the second half of this presentation. Then is a good place to talk about your credit, especially if there are credit issues. The more upfront you are about credit issues, the easier it's going to be to mitigate those issues. So if you know you had a bankruptcy 10 years ago, tell us off the bat. We are able to work with that. And then also, if you know that your credit might not be just right or there might be some other circumstances, discuss the possibility of a guarantor or co-signer. So we're about to go into the cash flow section, but I wanted to see if there are any questions before that. Nope. Okay. So in this cash flow section, we're going to talk a little bit about what cash flows are. Then I'm going to pull up a blank cash flow spreadsheet and we're going to make a 2-year cash flow for a small business that doesn't exist. So what are cash flows? Well, they're just going to show you the amount of money coming in and the amount of money going out. And that's important because it lets you know whether or not you're making a profit. If you're pulling in $5 million a week, but it costs you $5.5 million a week to do the business, you don't have a successful business. So this is going to be a document that says, this is where I expect to be. And then it's something that you can check throughout the life of your business to make sure that you are where you needed to be. So this is the scary document that we're going to be filling out. Again, I'm happy to email you all blank copies of this. A few things to understand before we go into it. Number one, this is a living document that's going to change over the life of the business. Not only will these projections not be 100% accurate, the vast majority of these cells are going to end up being different than what you project, and that's okay. You also want to be realistic. Even if you know you're going to sell 2 billion units in year one, if you put that in your cash flow projections, it's going to scare away lenders. So show that you can do well in a worst case scenario. For example, we had a person who made handmade wedding invitations. They were a one-person shop. And what they did was they said, well, there's 10,000 weddings a year in Maryland. And I make $1,000 per wedding. So the math says I'll make $10 million a year. Well, as we all know, not everybody gets wedding invitations. There's people who elope. There's folks who make their own invitations. There's folks that don't have $1,000 to spend on wedding invitations. So we said, look, show us that you can do what you need to do doing 5 or 10 weddings a month. And then if you do more than that, you're just going to make more money. So what you really want to show is that in a worst case scenario, you can pay your folks, pay your bills, and pay yourself. And one good way to do that is to make sure to make this as detailed as possible. So there's going to be expenses and income listed on here, but those are just examples. You can always change those headers to make sure you're getting everything that you have. So when you're thinking about maybe a restaurant, you might break it out, dine in, carry out, or catering, but you might also say, look, we're going to have a bar in our restaurant. So I think we're going to do 70% food and 30% liquor. And then after 6 months, you can look at your books and say, wow, we're doing 60% food and 40% liquor. And based on the way that money is flowing, you can say, is the issue that our food program needs to be improved? Or that our drink program is so strong that possibly investing in that will be a better use of our money. And the more detail you have in your cash flow projections, the better you're going to be able to make those decisions. Another thing that you want to think about in your expenses are things that are sort of investment expenses. Those are things like your marketing and your advertising, your accountant, your lawyer, making sure that you've got money set aside for all of those things that you are going to need in your business, so that you can grow, and continue to pay yourself, pay your employees, and pay your bills. One last thing you want to think about also is, do your sales change month to month? If you are a landscaper, your December and your April are probably going to look very, very different. So, why do we need these documents? Why do we have to put this together? Well, it's going to be required for most loans, which is huge. But even if you aren't applying for a loan, it's just a good planning tool. It's going to show you when you're going to be able to take money out of the business. It's going to show you that you understand what your business is doing. And then if something is not right, it's going to be something that you can use for good governance to understand, this is where the problem is. So therefore, this is how we can fix those problems. We are about to go into this, but just so you know, before you were to do one of these on your own, what you would need is a template, not necessarily ours. You need to know how much money you have in the bank specifically for the business. You want to break out your income and your expenses, understand what your payroll is going to be, what your loan is going to be, and what your loan payments are going to be. And if you're selling an item, sort of if you can get a percentage of what the inventory is, that's going to make life a lot easier as well. So as I stop the PowerPoint to pull up the cash flow projections, are there any questions before we get started? Oop, okay. So here is Nick's dill pickles on that same spreadsheet that we had before. Well, the first thing that we're going to notice here is that April is almost over. There's nobody applying for a loan on April 22nd and getting that money in April. So we are going to start this cash flow in May. I'm then going to put, my business name in, and that's just, so that I know what I'm looking at. So, as you see here, I've got food truck, catering, and merch as income, but I'm not a food truck. So I am going to be selling at farmers markets. Um, I'm going to be selling wholesale to restaurants, and I'm going to do some online sales. Let's assume that we're going to take a loan out for $15,000. Now, before we start putting our income in, let's start thinking about our expenses. So the first thing we want to look at here is our inventory costs. Now, again, I cannot stress enough that these numbers are not real. But let's assume that the inventory cost, like for every $10 in pickles that I sell, it's going to cost me $3 to make. So my first line with inventory is 13, and then the column here is C. So in this thing here, you'll hit up for the sum, and then it'll tell you C20, but really what you want to do is C13, then a little semi, Oop, not 213. And then C, and I'm going to do 17 because we're not including the loan in something that's going to have an inventory cost. Then we're going to multiply that by 30% because that's what it costs me. Now, of course, I have no income yet, so there is no inventory cost. Other things we want to think about are wages. Honestly, with this business, it would probably be 1099 employees, but we're going to do it like W-9 employees because we just want to show you as much as possible. You want to think about any type of services that you're going to have, any storage needs, if you're going to have any gas or fuel or distribution costs. Those are all things that you want to make sure that you have in your what's it called, in your cash flow projections. Alrighty, so then as you go down, you're going to see rent. It is important to know that we cannot pay rent or mortgage for a home-based business. We also cannot pay utilities for a home-based business. Um, every business is going to have a $3,000, a $300 annual fee. And then there's probably more money for this food-based business. So I'm going to just assume it's $600 for the year here. So those are some expenses, but then we've got these sort of more set expenses. So for instance, the startup cost of that 15,000, I'm going to use 12,500 to buy equipment. The other 2,500 is going to be just working capital. So now, as you can see, I've only got a few little expenses in here. What we're going to start doing is we're going to start adding some income. So May is when both farmers markets open up in Baltimore. So I'm going to be having Saturday night and Saturday morning in Waverly, Sunday morning in under I-83. The Sunday one is considerably bigger. Um, so we are going to say, maybe between the two, we'll make $1,000 a week. Generally, there's 4.25 weeks in a month, so 4,250. Month two, folks are going to understand who we are a little bit more. We'll probably do a little bit better. July, there's tourists coming in. Pickles are a thing that people can take back as presents. More folks are learning about us. So, we might see another significant jump there. Um, August, same thing. We're becoming a bit of a brand. People know who we are. September, they're both still in. It's the fall. People are getting ready to cook for the holidays, are getting ready for presents. So we might see a little bit of a jump there. Probably stabilize around there. And then the weather starts to get not as nice. So you're not as busy as the farmers market. So you might see a significant drop with a little bit of a bump in December for holiday presents. January, we're down to only one farmer's market. It's the Waverly one, which is smaller. So we're probably going to see a significant drop. There probably won't be much of a change for February, but then in March, we're going to start doing better again. And then by April, we're going to be doing a little bit better and ready for that next farmer's market season. Now, wholesale, I figure I want to get a restaurant at about $250 added each month. Month one, there probably isn't one. Month two is when we start adding them. And then, we're doing pretty well there. Online, in month one, I've got lots of friends and family. They're going to buy a bunch, but then it's going to taper off. And I don't think I'm ever going to do more than $500 a month unless something really special happens. All right, so we'll just put the zero here just so that we know that we didn't forget to put something in that space. So now what we're saying is that including the $15,000 loan, we are going to be bringing in $10,750. Now already, we have this expense at 30% for our cost to produce the pickles. So those are going to change based on what the sales were for the month. Gross wages. Now, with two farmers markets, we're going to need folks right away. So, if I figure I'm paying $15 an hour, probably 10 hours a weekend, um, at 4.25, that's going to be $637 a month. So we'll make that 650. Um, August, September, we'll probably get a little bit more busy. So I'm going to get another person on part-time, bring it back down. And then when it's just the few months, it'll probably just be me, when the other markets aren't open. So, as you can see, we're paying about $5,500 for the employees, and about 10% of that is going to go into payroll expenses. Then we're going to think about outside services. Well, I don't need a trash. I don't need a dumpster, or anything for storage, but office supplies I will need. I'm going to need to print invoices. I'm going to need shipping supplies, all kinds of things. So maybe let's say, $1,500 to start, and then maybe $100 a month. As I said, we're not having subscriptions, we're not having storage, but we are going to want to advertise. So let's get the word out, maybe starting at 250 for the first month, going down $50 a month, until we get down to 100. This is going to be mostly for social media. Um, Accounting and legal, I'm going to save $50 a month for each of those. In case I do need an accountant or a lawyer, I'm going to have some money set aside. Rent. Well, there's two rents that we're going to be talking about. So what we want to say is that kitchen rent, because I'm going to be cooking in a kitchen, a ghost kitchen, and then market rent, um, which is going to be the cost to get me in the farmers markets. The kitchen rent, again, these are not real numbers. For evening usage is going to be $500 a month. The market rent is, and again, these are not real numbers. Let's think $400 a month during the two market season and $150 a month during the one market season. Insurance, I am dealing with food, and pressure with pickling, so it is probably going to be more than that 1,200. So let's assume $200 a month. And I don't have any professional fees. Um, so now we're going to go down into these other expenses. So first thing is your MCE loan payment. Um, this is not a real number. Actually, yeah, this is not a real number, but let's assume $350 a month. You're not gonna be paying in month one, but let's assume month two, even though it may be month three. Again, we're always trying to plan for a worst case scenario. So then what we're showing here with all of these expenses put in is at the end of the year, starting with zero plus a $15,000 loan, I'm going to end up with $41,525 in the bank, which is what this number is here. So we're going to remember that 41,525, and we're going to copy the entire spreadsheet. Then going to go to year two, and we're just going to paste that right over. Then we're going to remember that number, 41,525, 41,525. And then we're going to say, well, how much better are we going to be doing this year than we did last year? So I think that it's safe to say that we're going to bump up to start at 6,000, and that we're going to add $2,000 a month, which is until we get to 20,000, because we're going to be realistic. I'm also, just for time, going to say we're going to cap out at $3,000 a month for the wholesale, and stick with that $500. We don't need a second loan. So now we've made $226 without a loan. We're going to go and make sure that our wages and everything are going to stay the same, but they're not, because we're doing better. So we're going to give our folks a raise. I'm not going to need that initial supplies, but I'm probably going to need more than just, the normal in month one. Advertising, we are going to be able to keep it $100 a month. Everything else should stay the same, except for we're going to add another loan payment, take away the startup cost, but things break. So in the middle of the year, I'm going to put $5,000 in reserve. As you can see now, at the end of the year, I've got $166,000 in the bank for my business, which means I think I can start paying myself. So if I paid myself $4,000 a month out of the business, not trying to quit my day job here, um, I'd still have $118,000 in the business while adding $48,000 to my personal income. So again, on the assumption that these are not real numbers, but in this world, this business would be doing really well. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. When I send the blank spreadsheet, I will also send this filled out one. It's good to know that you are all MCE clients if you're on here, so you can contact us directly and we can do a one-on-one Zoom to help you do your particular cash flow absolutely for free. Before I take this off the screen, are there any questions about the cash flow? Alrighty, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and bring back up the PowerPoint. Alrighty, so a few things before we start talking about the specific loans. Some things to remember. Number one, a lot of folks forget to put the year-end number at the beginning of year two, so they start off at $0 again, which can make your cash flows look bad. You also want to make sure that you're taking enough money to live, but not enough to hurt your business. You want to make sure you've got expenses in there for those accountants, those legal, and that marketing. You want to be careful about negative cash flow, especially if it's going on more than 4 to 6 months. You want to keep that loan and that loan payment in there, and you want to keep your expectations realistic. So now that you've got them, you can go ahead and apply for that loan, line of credit or a grant. You can make sure you're reviewing it at least once a month to make sure you're meeting your goals, and so you can plan growth. And then if you notice that there are changes, update it so that you can see if your projections with the new information are now more accurate. So now let's talk about funding. So when you apply for a loan at a CDFI, and actually for most for-profit banks, you're going to be giving a lot of the same information. For us, everything that we do is online. So we have an MCE intake form. You can find that at marylandcapital.org. There's a button in the top right-hand corner that says Get Started Here. Fill that out, and within 2 or 3 days, somebody's going to contact you and start your counseling for you. Then there's going to be the business loan application and the personal information supplement, which is our simplified personal financial statement. Every business, whether new or existing, is going to need a business plan, 24 months of cash flow projections, some kind of documentation that you've been turned down for a previous loan. If you go to a bank and they say we don't do startups, that's good enough. They're also going to see 2 years of personal business taxes and 2 years of personal taxes and personal bank statements from anybody who owns 20% or more of the business. And then if your business has been around long enough, we're going to want to see profit and loss statements, balance sheets, business taxes, and business bank statements for 3 months. Anything else here is optional, but if you can get us a lot of reference letters, that's always going to be great. If you're looking to open a salon and you've got a chair somewhere else and you come to us with a stack of 50 letters from clients saying that they're going to move to your shop when you open, it's probably going to be pretty easy to get a yes on that loan. But other things you might want to include might be, a copy of a lease or a letter of intent, invoices or contracts, certifications you may have, definitely a resume, things like that. If you're in existence or you already have your website or social media up, share those as well. Anything that's going to help tell your story. Now, what do you need in order to get a loan from us? Well, you do have to have been turned down by a traditional lender. We're going to want to see that thorough business plan. We're going to want to understand your experience in the field, or if you don't, how you're going to get it. A strong but reasonable cash flow. We do require collateral for most of our loans. So, what is that collateral? How close is it to the loan amount? And now we've got reasonable credit. As you can see here, there is not a number associated with it. And that is because we do not have a minimum credit score. What we are looking for is what's been going on in the last 12, really to 24 months. We're looking for things like missed payments, past due amounts, things like that. We are looking at high credit usage, but it's nowhere near as important as making your payments on time. We understand that as you're starting and growing your business, you're going to be using a good amount of your credit. There are two disqualifiers, however, and that is if you've had a bankruptcy discharged in the last 24 months or you have a tax debt without a business plan. We're also going to look and make sure that it's a good time and place for you to open up that business. Is it sort of a global or national or regional economy thing, or is it that you're trying to open up the sixth pizza restaurant on a block? How are you going to survive? And then your ability to repay the loan. If the business is not successful, can you hop back in that workforce and pay us back that loan that you still owe us? Now, these are the different loans that we have. For small businesses, are eligible up to about $35,000 if you're 2 years or newer, up to about $150,000 if you're older. The term is going to be dependent on the size of the loan. So if you are borrowing 50,000, it's probably going to be 6 or 7 years. If you're borrowing 100, it's probably going to be 10 years. The interest rates are set at 6 to 12%. Most of these are going out in the 8% range, sometimes 7, sometimes 9, but around in there. We do require collateral, and if it is real estate, we're going to need an appraisal that's less than a year old to close, but don't get that if you don't already have it until your loan has been approved. Anybody who owns 20% or more of the business is going to have to personally guarantee the loan, and if there are enough business owners that nobody owns 20% or more, we're going to want to see 3 or 4 people. The application fee is $100 plus $25 per owner for a credit report. We only do TransUnion and we only do soft pulls. We will be able to give you a full copy of your credit report. Assuming thinking positively, there are some closing costs. Generally, a $50,000 loan walks out with just north of 48,000. We do automatic payments from your business checking account, either on the 1st or the 15th of the month, which is something that we can talk about as we're, closing your loan. We do not have prepayment penalties, so as long as your loan is 30 days old or older, you're going to be able to pay it off for exactly whatever the principal is at the moment. On the other side of that, if you know you can't make a payment, let us know a week ahead of time and we'll figure something out. We can defer, we can interest only, we can even restructure loans. As you have your loan, we're going to visit you twice a year, either in person or virtually. At that visit, we're going to want to see your books, talk to you about how your business is doing, and let you know about other free resources we have for you. And then the question is my business eligible and what can I use the funds for? So most small businesses in Maryland are eligible, except for those traditional sin industries. Those are things like adult bookstores, 100% alcohol, 100% tobacco. However, we are able to work with both medical and recreational cannabis. As far as uses go, really any small business expense, it can be build out, it can be the lease. If you're buying a building for your business, it can be the mortgage there. It can be your equipment, your inventory, training, uniforms, anything like that. Now, if you are a home-based business, as I said, we can't pay your rent, your mortgage, or your utilities. And if you are in a real estate investment business, we cannot purchase properties for you to, either sell or turn into apartments, or mixed use if you're not going in there. But we can fund things like your trucks, building out your own office. So I like to think of it as, things like a truck or a jackhammer, yes. A screw or a drywall, no. The other loan that we have is our credit builder loan. This is for folks who either have no credit or poor credit or have a business that need the money a little bit quicker than our normal process. These go up to $5,000, generally have a 2-year term, always have a 9% interest rate, and don't require collateral. Other than the fees being significantly lower, they're the same as our other loans. Before I finish the presentation, I just like to let folks know that there's nowhere else in the country with more free small business resources than where we are right now. The Maryland area just got everything. So talk to all of us. So that's us, your local library, your county's economic development organization, your local chamber, the state. The SBA, which has got great programs like the Small Business Development Center, SCORE, talk to your universities. Even if you didn't go there, they might have help for you. And of course, your local business organizations like your Main Streets or your downtown partnerships. So a few things I like to say before I wrap up. Number one, don't quit your day job. As you're growing your business, you're going to need income. So you want to make sure to have that. Number two, unless you are an accountant, you need an accountant. So, make sure that as you're in the weeds growing your business, you've got somebody making sure you're making all of your deadlines so that you can stay in good standing and be eligible for all of our services and all other government services. Next, ask for help. As I said in that last slide, there's nowhere better to do it. We are never going to be offended if you ask other folks the same questions. Sort of with number one, this is the time to keep your money in the bank. If you're looking for a business loan, unless you have to, you don't want to be buying a car or a house or opening up credit cards, things like that. And then no business in Ireland. All that means is people shop at small businesses because small businesses are part of their community. So be a part of that community. Get involved, donate to local charities, sponsor a local kids softball team, become a leader in your chamber of commerce. Make sure your Main Street knows who you are. The more you're involved in the community, the more your community is going to want to take advantage of your business. We've got a whole bunch of webinars coming up. I'm going to have a three-part series, which you've just watched part two of coming up in May. But if you wanted to get the first steps and then a little bit more in depth, let's talk funding. But we've also got, an Instagram workshop coming in, a special resources for veteran small businesses. There's just all kinds of things going on. So make sure you take advantage of all of those. Also check out the SBA website for trainings that they have that are free. With that, I'm going to open it up for any questions. All right. Well, I'm not seeing
I just
anybody.
have one
Oh,
question.
oh, sure. Yep, James.
Yes. How long does the process take for the regular loans and the credit builder loans? How long does it take to actually receive, if you're going to be approved? How long does it take?
Gotcha. Great question. So the credit builder is going to be quicker, so I'll do that fast. That's accepted as on a rolling basis. Generally, you're going to get an answer within 2 weeks of application, and if it's a yes, you're looking at 2 to 3 weeks to close. Our larger loans, we accept applications through the second Friday of the month. Um, with that, um, you get a decision by the end of the month, and if it's a yes, you're again looking at 3 to 4 weeks to close. But sometimes it can take as long as 2 or 3 months to get all of your paperwork together. So it really depends on where you are at the start, how long the whole process is going to take. But once you're approved, you're looking at 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions? Nope. Well, as I said, I always think of these best questions as soon as these things end. So feel free to email me at nrudolph@marylandcapital.org for any of the materials we talked about, for copies of the slides, or to schedule, one-on-one cash flows. And thank you all for spending your lunchtime with me. It's been a great time, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.